What would y'all say was the leading cause of the depth of the Puritans? They seem to have just a clearer thinking than what we do now, and a greater depth, spirituality about themselves.
Well, let me say a couple quick things to that. It's not a simplistic answer. There's a number of factors involved. The first thing, of course, and maybe the major thing, is that there are certain periods in church history where the Holy Spirit does work a deeper level of spirituality in the minds and hearts of the people of God. And where those periods exist, what you find is that iron sharpens iron also among the people of God that way. And there was a camaraderie, there was a spiritual brotherhood, especially among the Puritan ministers, that I think deepened their own spirituality. I serve with 3 ministers now in my church, or 2 others beside myself, and that's something fairly new for me in my life. But the fact that you have other ministers and they're preaching and you talk together about different truths you have, it actually helps you, deepens your own spirituality too, I believe. That's a blessing. So spiritual brotherhood is one thing. And the Holy Spirit's work is certainly a major factor here. The third thing I would say is that when it comes to the Puritans, don't forget, they could fully embrace everything the Reformers said. So they didn't have to spend all their energy hammering out again justification by faith alone, or the authority of the church and the authority of the word and that type of thing. That was all done for them. So they could put more energy into how do you actually live the Christian life. Though Luther and Calvin did do that, of course, and Dr. Trueman's just written a whole book on Luther and the Christian life. They had more time to really deal with, okay, how are we going to be a godly husband and a godly wife? And by thinking through so many different areas of practical Christian living, I think that also had the impact of with the Spirit's blessing, deepening their spiritual life. But ultimately, you can't attribute it to any just mere human factor. There is something substantially, very wonderfully deep about the Puritans and their spirituality. But you can make the same argument for Luther and Calvin, don't forget. And the other thing you need to remember is not all Puritans were sufficiently deep, like, say, Thomas Watson or Thomas Goodwin or John Owen. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Puritan books that have never been reprinted and actually don't deserve to be, because they are more shallow and they're not that kind of deep spirituality. So the Puritan books that get reprinted tend to be the cream, and you've got to remember that factor as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think time is a great corroder of rubbish. When you think about hymns, the hymns we have from the 18th century, we now think of the Wesleys as great hymn writers, but actually they wrote a lot of garbage too. It's that the garbage doesn't survive through history. So, as Joel said, there's a lot of rubbish written in the 17th century as well, or a lot of not so much rubbish, but stuff that just had relevance for the day in which it was written. And it may well be in 300 or 400 years' time, people look back on this era and think, well, there were some great thinkers there, and that will be simply because that's all that has been reprinted and survives from now.